Good evening, my dear friend. Tonight, let's relax our minds, take a deep breath, and let the worries of a long day simply fade away. Because tonight, we won't be visiting familiar fairylands or sparkling enchanted forests. Instead, we'll embark on a thrilling journey through the mists of time and space to a distant land where the shores whisper ancient secrets. This is a story about the impossible, about a colossal footprint etched in stone, a mark that might hold a warning from the very edges of the cosmos. Are you ready? Snuggle up in your warm blankets, close your eyes, and listen. The wind, a phantom breath from the East Sea, carried whispers of salt and an ancient, untold story across the rugged coastline of what was once known as Indochina. For centuries, these whispers had been dismissed as the idle ramblings of fishermen or the feverish dreams of isolated villagers. But the truth, as it often does, lay buried beneath layers of folklore and forgotten time, waiting for an unwitting soul to stumble upon its chilling reality. This wasn't a tale for the faint of heart, nor for those who clung to the comforting certainties of known history. This was a story woven from the fabric of primeval fear, of cosmic dread, and the terrifying possibility that humanity was not alone, nor entirely in control, on this fragile blue marble. Our story truly begins not in the sun-drenched rice paddies or bustling markets of a forgotten land, but in the sterile, dust-free archives of the Smithsonian Institute in Washington, D.C. Dr. Eris Thorne, a man whose life revolved around the deciphering of ancient texts and the reassembly of forgotten histories, found himself increasingly drawn to a series of cryptic reports. These weren't grand archaeological finds or earth-shattering revelations, but rather persistent, almost annoyingly consistent mentions of an impossible anomaly from a remote corner of Southeast Asia. A colossal footprint etched into solid rock, far too large to belong to any known creature, human or otherwise. Initially, Thorne, a pragmatist to his core, had dismissed them as local superstitions, perhaps exaggerated geological formations. But the reports kept coming, sometimes from independent explorers, sometimes from reclusive anthropologists, each echoing the same impossible detail: a footprint of a giant, or the mark of a forgotten god. What truly piqued his interest was a faded, grainy photograph included in one of the reports, a photograph taken in the 1920s by a French colonial administrator. It depicted a shadow, elongated and distorted, that unmistakably resembled a titanic human foot cast upon a craggy cliff face. The scale was terrifying, hinting at a presence that dwarfed even the most formidable dinosaurs. Thorne, driven by a scholarly curiosity that bordered on obsession, began to piece together fragments of local legends. These were not the vibrant, often joyous tales of mythical heroes, but darker, more unsettling narratives. They spoke of a time of shadow when the land was still raw and untamed, and beings of immense power walked among nascent humanity. Some whispered of a single, ancient entity, a watcher from beyond, whose very presence reshaped the landscape, twisted the very fabric of reality. The most disturbing consistency across these fragmented myths was the mention of a great cataclysm, a sundering, after which the watcher vanished, leaving behind only one indelible mark. This mark, the legends claimed, was a warning,
a symbol of a force so profound it could tear the very fabric of reality, a scar left by something utterly alien. Months turned into a year. Thorne's office transformed into a labyrinth of maps, ancient manuscripts, and geological charts. His colleagues, while respectful of his intellect, began to eye him with a mixture of concern and amusement. "Still chasing ghosts, Eris?" Dr. Eleanor Vance, a paleobotanist with a wry wit, would often quip. Thorne, however, was undeterred. He felt a pull, an almost preternatural urge to uncover the truth behind the enigmatic footprint. It was less about academic glory and more about a primal fear that simmered just beneath the surface of his conscious thought. He sensed a chilling revelation awaiting him, a truth that could shatter the foundations of conventional understanding.
The decision to travel to Vietnam was not an easy one. The region, even in contemporary times, remained a place of stark beauty and unpredictable challenges. Thorne, accompanied by a small, carefully selected team, a seasoned local guide named Lin, whose quiet competence belied deep understanding of the land's secrets, and a young, eager cartographer named Ben Carter, embarked on an expedition that felt less like an academic pursuit and more like a descent into the unknown. Their destination was a remote, coastal province, a place where the mountains met the sea in a dramatic, untamed embrace. The journey itself was arduous. They traversed dense jungle, where the air hung heavy and humid, alive with the buzz of unseen insects and the rustle of hidden creatures. They navigated treacherous rivers, their small boat battling against unseen currents, the water a dark reflective mirror of the oppressive canopy above. Lin, with an uncanny sixth sense, seemed to anticipate every twist and turn, every hidden danger. She spoke little, but her eyes, dark and ancient, seemed to hold the weight of generations of knowledge. As they drew closer to their destination, the atmosphere shifted. The vibrant symphony of the jungle slowly gave way to an unsettling quiet. The air grew cooler, carrying the strange metallic tang. The rock formations became more jagged, more alien, as if carved by a force beyond earthly comprehension. Ben, usually boisterous and optimistic, grew withdrawn, his gaze constantly sweeping the surrounding landscape, a tremor of unease in his voice. "It feels different out here, Dr. Thorne," he mumbled one evening, huddled around a sputtering campfire. "Like we're not supposed to be here." Thorne felt it too, a prickling sensation at the back of his neck, a sense of being watched by something ancient and unseen. The local villagers they encountered along the way were wary, their eyes darting away when the subject of the mark was raised. They spoke in hushed tones of spirits and forgotten protectors, their fear palpable. One old woman, her face a road mop of wrinkles, clutched a worn amulet and whispered, "Some things are best left undisturbed. The land remembers."
Finally, after weeks of relentless travel, Lin pointed towards a distant, towering cliff face shrouded in mist. "There," she said, her voice barely a whisper, "the place of the great mark." As they drew closer, the mist began to thin, revealing the sheer scale of the cliff. It was a monolithic testament to geological time, its surface scarred by millennia of wind and rain. And there, etched into its face, high above the crashing waves, was the impossible. It wasn't a mere indentation. It was a perfectly formed impression, an exact replica of a human foot, but on a scale that defied all logic. Thorn estimated it to be at least 50 feet long, its individual toes, the arch, even the subtle curve of the heel rendered with an uncanny precision. The rock within the footprint was smooth, almost polished, contrasting sharply with the rough, weathered surface of the surrounding cliff. It looked as if a colossal being had simply stepped onto the rock when it was still molten, leaving an eternal testament to its passage. Ben, usually meticulous with his measurements, simply stood, slack-jawed, his instruments forgotten. "My God," he breathed, his voice filled with a mixture of awe and terror. "It's impossible." Thorn, despite his years of exposure to the incredible and the unexplained, felt a chill that had nothing to do with the sea spray. This wasn't a natural phenomenon. This was an artifact, a deliberate imprint left by something utterly beyond human comprehension. He ran his hand over the polished surface within the print, a strange, resonant hum seeming to emanate from the rock itself, not sound, not truly, but a vibration that seemed to resonate deep within his bones, a feeling of immense, latent power. Lynn, standing a little apart, watched him with an unreadable expression. "They say," she began, her voice low, "that when the land was new and the stars were brighter, a great one walked here, a protector. But its power was too vast, its presence too much for this world, and so it left, leaving only this as a memory, a promise, or perhaps a warning." Thorn, intrigued by the mention of a protector, pressed her for more. Lynn hesitated, then spoke of ancient legends passed down through generations, tales of a cosmic entity, neither good nor evil, but simply being, that had intervened during a time of great chaos, preventing total annihilation. It had, the legends claimed, used its immense power to reshape the fledgling world, guiding nascent life. But the act itself had been too strenuous, too disruptive. To prevent further imbalance, it had chosen to withdraw, but not before leaving a final indelible mark. This mark was said to contain a fraction of its essence, a residual echo of its immense power.
As Thorn examined the footprint more closely, he noticed subtle, almost imperceptible lines etched into the rock around the heel of the print. They weren't natural fissures. They formed a pattern, a series of geometric symbols that seemed to pulse with a faint, almost subliminal light when he caught them at a certain angle. These symbols, he recognized with a jolt, bore a striking resemblance to a set of glyphs he had seen in the ancient Vietnamese texts he had studied back in the Smithsonian, glyphs that were often associated with cosmic alignment and celestial events. He traced the symbols with his finger, a feeling of deep resonance washing over him. This wasn't just a footprint, it was a key. "Lynn," he said, his voice taut with excitement, "do these symbols mean anything to you? Have you ever seen them before?" Lynn approached, her eyes narrowing as she studied the markings. "These are old," she said slowly, "very old. The stories say they are the words of the Skywalker. They are said to point to a hidden place, a place of immense power, where time bends and reality shimmers." Ben, recovering from his initial shock, joined them, his cartographer's instinct kicking in. He began to map the lines, his brow furrowed in concentration. "It looks like a directional pattern, Dr. Thorn," he mused, "a series of converging lines, pointing inward, towards the cliff itself." Thorn's mind raced. What if the footprint wasn't just a mark, but a signpost, a clue to something hidden within the rock? The legend spoke of a place of immense power, a chamber of echoes. For days, they meticulously surveyed the area around the footprint, using every piece of equipment they had. The subtle vibrations Thorne had felt earlier seemed to intensify as they focused on the area indicated by the symbols. Finally, Ben's ground-penetrating radar picked up an anomaly. A large, hollow space deep within the solid rock, directly beneath the heel of the colossal footprint. The implications were staggering. It wasn't just a natural cave. The radar readings showed perfectly straight lines, geometric angles that spoke of artificial construction, of something deliberately hollowed out.
Accessing the chamber proved to be an engineering challenge. They couldn't simply blast their way in. The ancient structure, whatever it was, might be too fragile. Lin, after much deliberation, suggested a hidden entrance, known only to a few, passed down through the generations, a narrow, almost invisible fissure in the rock face, further down the cliff, obscured by dense foliage. It was, she said, a path of whispers, used by those who sought solace, or perhaps answers. The descent was claustrophobic, the air thick with the smell of damp earth and ancient stone. They moved by the beam of their headlamps, the silence broken only by the drip of water and their own ragged breathing. The passage seemed to twist and turn endlessly, a winding tunnel into the heart of the mountain. Then they emerged into an expansive cavern. It was not a natural formation. The walls were smooth, perfectly cut, radiating a faint, ethereal glow that seemed to emanate from the very stone itself. The air was cool and still, devoid of the usual sounds of the outside world, creating a profound sense of isolation. In the center of the cavern, bathed in the soft, otherworldly light, stood an immense crystalline structure. It was unlike anything Thorne had ever seen. It wasn't carved or assembled. It seemed to have grown organically from the rock, shimmering with an inner light, its facets reflecting the faint luminescence of the cavern walls. It hummed, a low, constant thrum that resonated not in their ears, but deep within their chests, a vibration that felt both ancient and profoundly alive. As they approached, Thorne noticed what appeared to be etchings on the surface of the crystal, not symbols, but intricate, swirling patterns that seemed to shift and flow like liquid light. These patterns, he realized with a gasp, were not static. They were moving, evolving, depicting scenes. And, as he focused, he understood. They were images of cosmic events, nebulae swirling into existence, galaxies colliding, stars being born and dying in spectacular bursts of light. But interspersed within these cosmic panoramas were other images, disturbing and profound, visions of planets forming, of life emerging from primordial oceans, and then a glimpse of a titanic being, its form shifting and undefined, its shadow falling across nascent worlds. This was the Watcher from beyond, the entity of legend. The images on the crystal showed its immense power, its intervention in the formation of stars, the shaping of worlds. But then the patterns shifted, becoming more turbulent. Thorne saw visions of destruction, of celestial bodies tearing apart, of a cataclysmic event that seemed to threaten all creation. And then the Watcher, its form now clearer, more defined, reaching out with an immense hand, seemingly pushing back the encroaching chaos. It was an act of creation, but also of immense sacrifice. The final images on the crystal were the most poignant. The Watcher, its form shimmering, seemed to shrink,
its essence withdrawing, leaving behind only a faint, lingering echo. And then the crystal displayed a final image, the colossal footprint appearing on the surface of a fledgling earth, a silent, eternal sentinel.
As Thorn and his team stood transfixed, the ambient hum in the chamber intensified. The crystalline structure pulsed brighter, casting dancing shadows on the cavern walls. A voice, not heard with their ears, but felt within their minds, resonated through the cavern. It was ancient, vast, and filled with an inexplicable melancholy. "We are the echoes," the voice resonated, "the remnants of a greater design. We saw the chaos, the inevitable unraveling. We intervened for a time, but our presence, it distorted the natural flow. We learned that true creation allows for its own path, its own errors, its own ultimate truths." The voice paused, and Thorn felt a profound sense of understanding wash over him. The Watcher wasn't a god in the traditional sense, but an entity of immense power and cosmic awareness that had attempted to impose order on a chaotic universe, only to realize the inherent dangers of such intervention. "The mark," the voice continued, "is a memory, a warning. The imbalances we rectified then, they will re-emerge. The forces of dissolution are cyclical. When the shadows lengthen and the sky weeps, the memory of our intervention will stir. The mark will pulse, a beacon for those who are ready to listen, to understand the deeper currents of existence." The voice began to fade, becoming less distinct, more like a distant echo. The light from the crystal dimmed, and the hum subsided, leaving them in a profound, unsettling silence. Ben, shaken but exhilarated, found his voice first. What was that, Dr. Thorn?" he stammered, his eyes wide. Thorn, his face etched with a mixture of awe and fear, could only shake his head. "An echo, Ben. An echo from a time before time. A warning for the future." They spent hours in the cavern, meticulously documenting everything, though Thorn knew that no camera, no sensor, could truly capture the profound experience they had just undergone. The crystal structure, while still emanating a faint glow, had settled into a quiescent state, its images no longer shifting. It was a library of cosmic history, a silent testament to unimaginable power. As they made their way back out of the mountain, the world outside seemed different. The jungle felt more alive, the wind more poignant. The impossible footprint on the cliff face now held a deeper, more chilling significance. It wasn't just a physical anomaly. It was a cosmic clock, a silent timer, counting down to an unknown future. Back in his office at the Smithsonian, Thorn found himself unable to articulate the full scope of what he had witnessed. He presented his findings, the geological data, the ancient texts, the photographic evidence of the colossal footprint, even carefully crafted descriptions of the crystalline structure and the inexplicable voice. His colleagues, while intrigued by the sheer scale of the footprint and the potential for a previously unknown ancient civilization, remained skeptical of the more mystical aspects of his report. Dr. Eleanor Vance, though impressed by the sheer volume of his research, gently suggested that perhaps the stresses of the expedition,
combined with the isolation, had led to some embellished interpretations. Thorne understood. How could he possibly convey the feeling of an ancient cosmic consciousness speaking directly into his mind? How could he explain the profound sense of destiny and warning that now weighed heavily on his soul? He published his findings, carefully omitting the more fantastical elements, presenting the footprint as an archaeological mystery, a geological anomaly of unprecedented scale. It garnered significant academic attention, solidifying his reputation as a leading expert in ancient cultures. But the deeper truth, the chilling implications of the Watcher's message, remained his own burden. He often found himself staring at the faded photograph of the footprint, the shadow it cast upon the cliff face. He knew it wasn't just a geological curiosity. It was a silent prophecy, a dormant alarm. The imbalances the ancient voice had spoken of, he saw them manifesting in the modern world: environmental collapse, societal discord, a creeping sense of existential dread. The wind from the East Sea continued to carry its whispers, but now, to Dr. Eris Thorne, they were no longer just idle ramblings. They were echoes of a cosmic warning, a reminder that some things, even those etched in solid rock, were never truly forgotten. And as he looked out at the bustling city, at the endless human endeavors, he couldn't help but wonder, when the shadows truly lengthened and the sky began to weep, would humanity be ready to listen to the silent cry of the ancient footprint, or would they dismiss it once again as just another impossible enigma? The answer, he feared, lay in the unknowable depths of a future he could only dimly perceive. The mark remained, a testament to a truth too vast, too terrifying for humanity to fully comprehend.